I was born in August of 1977, and actually what happened is my biological mother underwent a saline infusion abortion, and this abortion took place over 5 days, and the intent, of course, was to end my life. I was ultimately delivered in bed by a nurse on the 5th day of the abortion procedure, and I was believed to be dead, and actually I was left for dead along the bedside table as they tended to my biological mother. At the time that they were caring for her, they noticed that I started to make grunting noises and small movements, and the nursing staff stepped in and started to provide me with medical care that ultimately sustained my life. But the important thing for me in that is that the doctors and nurses stepped in and did what they were called to do, which was to provide me with medical care that has allowed me to live the life that I have. Sadly for me, in visiting Australia, I've learned that children aren't afforded that same opportunity. We know in Victoria there are children like me who are aborted each day and survive like I did, but none of them are alive to tell their story because all of them have been left to die.
One of the amendments was to make it clear that once a baby who was aborted is born alive, that all medical personnel have a duty of care to that baby. That was rejected by a majority of members here. I think the Victorian public knew very little about what was going on in here and what law was actually passed in the end. If they had known, I think people would be pretty upset.
My view is that the bill will pass. There may be amendments. I imagine, of course, there'll be a variety of amendments. There may be amendments. I imagine, of course, there'll be a variety of amendments.
In the United States, we do have some protection for unborn children. In 2004, there was legislation called the Infants Born Alive Act, which legislates that children like me should be and can be afforded that medical care that sustains our life.
It's hard to imagine a worse bill and a worse model, and indeed that was partly why it was passed here, to be a model for other jurisdictions. It's very extreme, and I think it is probably the worst in the Western world. I think that for both major parties it was a conscience vote in theory, but several members of the ALP were told if you don't vote for this bill, you will not get a pre-selection again. In terms of the content of the abortion law itself, there's a tiny bit of window dressing for the last stages of pregnancy, but basically it says that abortion is a right until birth. Partial birth abortion, you probably know, involves turning the baby around in the womb, dragging the baby out generally with forceps at the feet until the baby's head is still in the birth canal, and then killing the baby before removing the head from the birth canal. At the last moment before birth, that is never in the medical interests of the mother, and a ban on that in the United States is in place. Its constitutionality has been upheld by the Supreme Court of the United States.
And certainly in the United States, we have doctors. They have the ability to make a conscientious decision on whether they will perform an abortion or not. And I've met a number of doctors here in Australia who have talked about the fact that performing abortions and not providing children like me who survive with medical care doesn't fit with the Hippocratic Oath.
The Act does remove the right to conscientious objection by doctors. Doctors under this Act are forced to be complicit in abortions, to refer for abortion, and even in so-called emergency situations to perform one. And that was achieved through a conscience vote. It is ironic that a conscience vote was used to remove the right to conscience of other people.
And again, I think that's something that really sets Australia and the United States apart. In the United States, we have a strong and very large number of pregnancy support centers across the nation that are open regular hours, have fully staffed counselors and medical professionals. We very much run off of a medical model in the United States, complete with pregnancy testing, ultrasounds, obstetric care as needed. And that is something that I have not come across here in Australia. Certainly, I've heard that there are very few pregnancy support centers that have the ability to be open the kind of hours that they would like to be to stay on par with abortion clinics. We know that abortion clinics have the ability to convince someone pretty quickly about what choice they're going to make. I've heard many, many times here in Australia that as a woman calls up an abortion clinic, they'll say, "We have a very impartial person who's going to counsel you. Please be present. But when you come, please bring a change of clothes, bring cash, and bring somebody with you who could drive you home in case you want to have the abortion." That really begs the question how impartial that counselor is when they're employed by the abortion clinic.
There's scientific evidence that the fetus feels pain well before birth. What's at stake is this whole edifice of the inhumanity of the fetus. When you admit these people feel pain, then you have to think they're not just blobs or collections of cells. Under the National Health and Medical Research Council guidelines, anyone performing any experimentation on an animal fetus is required to assume that halfway through the normal gestation, that animal can feel pain and is required to give them pain relief. So what applies to a chick, a baby chick in the egg, the unborn human doesn't get that degree of consideration. And the majority of members here voted explicitly to deny them that consideration too.
The whole concept of abortion is shrouded in secrecy, and I never cease to be amazed when you start to share information with people about what abortion procedures actually involve and give them the true numbers reflecting how many abortions are done each year, how many children survive like me and are left to die each year. People are appalled by the truth.
During the last state election in 2006, the government repeatedly assured the Victorian people that it had no intention of bringing in an abortion bill. Of course, it did bring in one, and I think that it's clear that they intended to do so all along. I think this Legislative Council is a great institution, not just for the beauty of its location, but wonderful traditions combined with democratic reforms, I think make it a great institution. But I think this abortion debate and the result of the abortion debate represents a failure of this institution, and a very profound one. It was a big event, I think. It was a big moment in the history of this Parliament. It's quite a moment, actually. But what's important, of course, isn't us. What's important are the unborn, and unfortunately, we didn't get done what we should have.
Rise up now and support the Australian Sovereignty Party. Join us in reclaiming the health of our nation. Stand by us as the only honest and accountable political party in history that will never keep secrets from the people. We are a new party, a new hope, and a new promise for a better and a brighter future. The Australian Sovereignty Party. It's time for real change.